Now I'd like to introduce, please, the next speaker, which is Piero Benvenuti, who will talk about an overview of the IAU Center.
Buenos días a todas y todos, y bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Welcome to everybody. I'm going to give a short overview of the IAU Center for the Protection and Darkened by Sky from Satellite Constellation Interference. And I will tell you immediately what I will not talk about. I'm not talking about the impact of the large constellation on astronomy and on the visibility of the night sky, because if you are here, either in person or remotely connected, you know very well what is the issue. And in any case, during this week, there will be a presentation of new data about what we found about this interference and simulation and what will be the future. I will not talk about this observing campaign because you will have the opportunity to see the result during this week. And also, I'm not going to talk about the possible mitigating measures that we are discussing with all stakeholders, because also that will be covered in the conference, as well as other CPS achievements. So I will use this time to do some personal reflection of the CPS experience, a very novel experience after about 18 months of operation. So I will talk about what has been the IAU position on the constellation, following what Willie just has said, and what brought the IAU to decide to create this center dedicated to the protection of the dark and quiet sky from the constellation. And then I will talk about what I found is the strength of our center and also the weakness. And as you will see, we have our activity divided formally in 4 hubs, in 4 areas of activities. And I found that each of those has a specific character in the way they work and how they produce results. So I think it's useful for all of us to understand these differences. And finally, I will make a short overview of what we consider the future plan of the center that we'll see. So what is the IAU position? Well, there was a prompt reaction of the Union after the first launch of the 60 Starlink satellite in 2019. And immediately we use our position of permanent observer in the Committee for the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, and in particular in its subcommittee, scientific and technical subcommittee, to raise the attention of the delegation, that is, of all the countries represented in that committee. There are currently more than 100, and to raise the attention about the threat that the constellation were causing to astronomy, to the science, and also to the visibility of the pristine night sky. So there was a technical presentation in 2020, presented at the STC, and soon after, the IAU decision was that we have to recognize that the large constellation may represent a significant progress in worldwide communication. And that is indeed what we see now. I mean, in fact, the constellation has reached a kind of geopolitical interest because it may be used for several purposes, not only for simple connection from everywhere in the world on internet, but it's then the use that you made of this connection that makes raise the attention, the geopolitical attention. However, although this can be considered a technological progress, certainly there is an impact on the environment. There are several types of impacts of this constellation, but of course we are mainly interested and concerned about the impact on the astronomical observation, both in optical infrared and in radio observation. So this has to be considered, and mitigating measure has to be found. So the IAU decided to follow two lines of action. The formal one, is to continue to seek the attention of the UN COPUOS on the matter and try to find voluntary consensus on voluntary mitigating measures. We knew from the beginning that that would be a long path and not an easy one. And indeed, I tell you, the last meeting of COPUOS, as several of you have been following, has been really a kind of dramatic meeting, trying to, on one side, people recognizing, delegation recognize the importance of finding mitigating measures with the contribution of all the stakeholders, and on the other hand, opposition to do that in the general discussion. So we knew that this was a long path. Nonetheless, is something that we have to pursue, because finding and obtaining the international attention to that is quite important. On the other hand, we cannot wait for something coming out of COPUOS, so the IAU decided to act more promptly by call for cooperation with all the stakeholders. And that was the principle or the interest in creating our center. In fact, what we found generally is that when we organize these 4 very important workshops and conferences that are listed there, the 2 SATCON workshops in the US and the 2 Dark and Quiet Skies Science for Science Society conferences that we organize jointly with the contribution of the UN and of the ISC. And as you know, and that has already been mentioned, we aim to have these conferences organized in La Palma. The first one has to be moved to online because of COVID. The second one, unexpectedly, we had to again organize it remotely because of the volcano. And finally, the third attempt, a la tercera va la vencida, we finally are here in this beautiful island, which is certainly inspiring us to be very conscious about the protection of the dark sky. So what I would say is that the organizing these 4 events show that there have been a large community interested in collaborating voluntarily on finding proper mitigation measures and implementing them. And so we didn't want to waste this large community that show the interest and the willingness to work together. And so that is the idea that brought up the IAU Center. And to make it short, the IAU made a call for proposals, and there was a very good proposal prepared jointly by Noir Lab and SKO. It was submitted, and it was accepted and negotiated with the IAU, and finally the CPS started its operation on April 1st last year. So this is the structure of the organigram of the CPS. We have already been mentioning the 2 co-directors that you have already met, and you will see talking them later, and I have the privilege to be the center director. And as I mentioned, we have 4 areas of activity, which we call hubs, and we have the SAT hub, which is you will see the result of these 4 areas during the conference. So I'm not going to spend much time here in describing that. But what I want to raise your attention is that the work of this in this area is essentially done by a large community of external members. So we have we divided formally the contributing members, who are the members that agree to formally commit resources in terms of time, in kind, and the affiliated members who cannot really commit specific resources, but certainly they are interested and willing to contribute freely to the activity of the center. And in fact, you see that there is a continuous growth of this member. This is an updated statistics up to the mid-August this year. and you see that there is a steady increase month by month by new members, and the geographical distribution is quite, in my opinion, satisfactory. You have a large contributing community from the US, and similarly from Europe. UK stands up as one of the very good contribution, and maybe that is one reason why they're not included among the European countries. But I mean, it's very important that we have such a big contribution. Latin America comes later, and Canada is also very consistent, and India, South Africa, and there are many others where just one or two contributing members. So I think that is quite satisfactory. It shows that the interest is very high, and the willingness to work together to find mitigating measures is present and satisfactory. Now, let me comment briefly about what I found is the strength of our center. Well, we have the fortune to have a very highly committed management team, the two co-directors, and the hub's co-leader that have been presented by Connie at the beginning. They're really great, and they're very committed. And we installed excellent internal communication practices. We have weekly meetings with the management team, which is sometimes a bit stressing, but it is essential to keep track of what has to be done and what is being done. We had the hubs chairs have bi-weekly meeting and even more frequent meeting. And just a consideration, I mean, this is really, in my opinion, a very new activity, a new center. We never had such a problem to be tackled globally, worldwide, with the entire astronomical community. So it was a challenge at the beginning, but it also shows the strength that our community can have. And I tell you, this very routinely, weekly meeting of the hubs show that people really take this very seriously. And they do all that voluntarily. That is the real big point, in addition to their institutional commitment and tasks. So we open, in terms of, technically we open Slack communication channels, which is quite useful to separate the communication from the usual email channel that you have, and we use other project management tools to keep track of what is being done. As I said, we enjoy a large contributing community, and they sign a very simple membership agreement that just, a kind of code of conduct that has to be followed by whoever wants to be a member of our center. As we will see from the result that will be presented during the conference, we had rather successful coordination of satellite observation campaign, which is absolutely essential. And in fact, is something that also the satellite company are asking us to do and to communicate the result to them, because at least some of them are also quite committed to find mitigating measures. So the data that we are collecting about the apparent brightness and the change of brightness with the orbit of the satellite is quite important for them to understand what they may have to do in terms of mitigating the impact. And we have been also working quite intensively to find options for the prediction of the ephemeris of the satellite, which, in my opinion, is the key point, the key goal that we should pursue to save the professional astronomical observation from the impact of the constellation, knowing very precisely when and where the satellites are being intersecting the field of view of our observation. We aim, the dream is to offer such a software as a service to everybody in the world, but that will take quite a bit of work, and we just started finding and experimenting with some of the possible options. As I said, with some satellite company, we had a satisfactory interaction, in particular with Starlink. They, as you know, and you will see, there have been quite several options to mitigate the apparent brightness, and we have continued discussion with them that will be also presented during the. And we have a dedicated website which connectors. Now, what is the weakness? Well, the point is, you know, it is the other side of the medal. The large community of contributing members, however, they work also voluntarily. And so from the management point of view, it's not easy to ask them to work more or to do or to respect deadlines. You know, it's always very difficult to say, well, you have to do this, and I'm expecting you to provide this report by tomorrow, when you know that these people are also committed to do institutional work, and they're not really paid for doing this voluntary work. So that is working fine, but I consider that also a point of attention. And the other point is that we have, as I said, a large community, but it's also a heterogeneous community. We have professional astronomers. We share with them our, you know, our procedure and culture of scientists. Other are enthusiastic amateur astronomers who have a slightly different approach, and so you have to compensate for these differences in a delicate way sometimes. To have a fruitful collaboration among these large. And then we have other people coming from other community and other interests. So this is, I'm not saying this is a real weakness, but it's a point of attention in terms of managing the large community. And that is also quite true for the interaction with the satellite company. It's quite clear and obvious to everybody that the interest of the astronomical community and of the communication satellite company are quite different. But we have to work together. However, the culture and the approach is different, even to the point of the language that you have to use when you're talking to these people, and what they also have to understand when they talk to us. So again, it's not a weakness, it's just a point of attention that we have to be aware of. I feel that the CPS website is a great thing to communicate the result that we're doing and what we are doing, but certainly we'll need more dedicated effort. And again, that is one of the weakness. We have to ask people to voluntarily work on that, and that is not always easy. 5 minutes. Yep, thank you. The implementation of this ephemeris, I mean, is a dream that we want to offer this as service to everybody, but it's quite clear that for implementing that properly, we will need financial resources, which at the moment we do not have. And we aim to start the fundraising activity as soon as we have a prediction of what is needed. I don't want to open up a fundraising campaign at large, a general fundraising campaign. We could, but I would prefer to do that with a very clear goal, saying we want to achieve this and this will cost so much, so can you help us? And this would be, you know, the approach that we will take for the fundraising. Now, very shortly, I think it's interesting because you will be learning during the conference the result and the activity of the 4 hubs, and you have to understand that they have quite different characters, which I really enjoy to see. But I think it's interesting for you and important for you to know this. So the SAT-Hub is a very astronomical-oriented activity, of course, and is formed by a mix of professional and astronomer and also very serious amateur astronomers. And they're dealing mainly with the observing campaigns and with trying to find solutions for the ephemeris. The Policy Hub is interested in the regulation worldwide, in the national level, international level, and is providing an excellent support to the IAU as a permanent observer in COPOS. And the interesting thing is that their activity, which is very well organized by Richard and Andy, has attracted the attention of space law experts, because it's a new challenge and it's something that also from the point of view of law is raising interesting avenues, not only for the interaction with astronomy, but also for other impact that the constellation will have. And the Community Engagement Hub is really very distinctive because there is a bidirectional communication between the CPS or the community of the CPS and the society at large, in particular with minorities that should be informed of what is happening properly with scientific rigorousness and rigor. And at the same time, we want to hear from the society, and in particular from minorities that normally are not represented in these decision-making circles, what they feel about what is happening in the sky. So this is, again, very delicate because we don't want to have overreaction from the minorities. We want them to be informed properly of what is happening without exaggeration, and they should know the advantages and disadvantages of the progress in technology that we are seeing, but we also want to hear them and to give voice to this community, to the decision-making circles. And finally, we have the Industry and Technology Hub. As I said, there is a delicate interface between two conflicting interests, the visibility of the night sky or the opening of the astronomical window for research, and the economical interest that the communication company, private communication company has. And that we want to keep this discussion open, but sometimes it's not easy, and we have to be very careful about even the language that we use. And finally, my last slide is about the future plans. We definitely need to improve the engagement of this large community of members. We experimented with the so-called regular town hall meeting, where we invite all the interested people of the members in meeting remotely, where we describe what has been achieved and what we plan to do. This is an excellent tool and we will implement that for all the hubs. We had a very good one for industry and technology, but we will have also for the other hubs. The hubs are now preparing very specific tasks that can be offered to the community to do. So they said, look, we want to do this because it's quite useful. Who can help there? And so they will be, the community will be called to engage in a very specific project with deadline and clear timeline so that they know what they have to do. And the Industry and Technology Hub is asking also to get some astronomer ambassador to the company, somebody that can talk to the other companies that are not yet deploying the constellation, but they are planning to do so, that can interface with them and offer support in evaluating what will be the impact of their new constellation to astronomy. And a very new thing that we have also the various hubs are producing interesting position papers in their activity, and that is almost completed, and that will be distributed to at large, and that will clearly indicate what are the situation and what is the position of the various hubs on the issue. And finally, a very new point, as you know, there is a lot of activity, space activity concerning the moon, for going back to the moon, creating new activity on the surface of the moon. However, we know that the surface of the moon can have, some of the sites on the surface of the moon have a lot of astronomical interest, not yet defined, but certainly we know that the far side of the moon in particular and other areas can be quite useful for installing astronomical instrumentation. However, that also has to be protected if we want to maintain the advantages that these sites can offer. And so this is another point that we have to raise the attention of the international community. And we have been discussing with the IAU Executive Committee if that has to be done in a separate working group of the IAU or given as a task to the CPS. The decision, the very recent decision, is that that should be it's more useful or practical to include that task in the CPS, which is already existing group. Although the issue is somehow different, and the community we have to talk about is also different from the satellite companies. Nonetheless, this has been the decision, but since this will require a new negotiation with the partners, with NORLab and SKO. This will take some time. So in the meantime, the IAU has decided to create a interim working group on this, and Richard Green will chair this group, and we will start immediately, possibly next February, to present the case at the Scientific and Technical Subcommittee of COPUOS, and then we will proceed from there, including more activity within the center. So I hope this has given you a short overview of and the consideration that is of this experience, which I think has been very exciting for me because, as I said, it's new, but it's very satisfactory so far, and I hope that will continue. And certainly this conference will give us more idea to us and how to proceed and how to maintain our support to the astronomy, to the professional astronomy, and also to the visibility of the pristine night sky. Thank you very much.